We begin with a Fox News alert. The growing controversy over the Washington Post columnist murdered in Turkey. Turkey's president is now alleging that Saudi officials planned the killing days before it happened. The dissident columnist went missing after entering the Saudi consulate in Istanbul on October 2nd. You're watching Outnumbered. I'm Harris Faulkner. Here today, Melissa Francis, Town Hall editor and Fox News contributor Katie Pavlich, syndicated radio talk show host and Fox News contributor Leslie Marshall, and in the center seat today, co-host Fox and Friends, Fox News radio host Brian Kilmeade, author of the book Andrew Jackson and the Miracle of New Orleans, The Miracle of Outnumbered.
Yes.
What? Hi.
Now out on paperback today, but it is a miracle of Outnumbered, and I'm no bitterness from last time there was a press conference that stopped me from having quality time with everyone on the couch.
No.
But I am over it. Thank God there's a therapist on staff.
Did you say that you have a book now that will fit in my handbag?
And bend. And be
Okay,
cheaper.
is that hardcover? I'm like carrying it in a backpack.
Yeah, I know.
Yeah.
People don't want to travel with books anymore.
Congrats.
Thank you.
Let's get to the news. Turkey's president earlier today saying his country has strong evidence the Saudis were behind the killing, and he wants the suspected killers tried in Turkey. Meanwhile, Istanbul police are denying reports that parts of the columnist's body have been found at the Saudi Consul General's residence. They say the search for Jamal Khashoggi's remains continues. The Saudis say Khashoggi died in a brawl at the consulate where he'd gone to get papers to marry his Turkish fiancée. President Trump yesterday questioned that account.
I spoke to the Crown Prince. We have people over in Saudi Arabia now. We have top intelligence people in Turkey. They're coming back tonight, tomorrow, and I will know very soon. And I am not satisfied with what I've heard.
Vice President Mike Pence today said the Saudis' relationship with the United States has been important in the region for 60 years. But this incident is troubling.
We're going to get to the bottom of it. This brutal murder of a journalist, of an innocent man, of a dissident will not go without an American response. And I expect without an international response.
The vice president also confirmed reports that CIA Director Gina Haspel has flown to Turkey. Greg Palcott on the news for us in London. Greg.
Harris, for 3 weeks, we have been hearing and relaying anonymous tips about the horrible death of Washington Post columnist Jamal Khashoggi. Now, at the very least today, we have some official claims for none other than Turkish President Erdogan. He said the killing of the writer at the Saudi Arabia Istanbul consulate 3 weeks ago was a planned, premeditated attack. And that runs absolutely counter to the Saudi account that it was an accidental death after an interrogation and then a fight. He also confirmed that 15 Saudis arrived in Turkey just before the killing and left just after. And they all had various roles in committing the crime. Here's a bit more of what the Turkish president had to say today.
All evidence gathered shows that Jamal Khashoggi was the victim of a savage murder. To cover up such savagery would hurt the human conscience.
Now, one big question Erdogan had, we all have, in fact, where is the body of Khashoggi? Where, in fact, are his body parts? It's claimed that he was cut up, chopped up after the killing. Some reports today, in fact, did have him buried near the consulate, but the Turkish president, in his speech, alluded to other areas around Istanbul where he could be. And as Saudi Arabian Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman met eerily with the family members, the son, the brother of Saudi citizen Khashoggi, there were new questions about whether, in fact, he is culpable. The Turkish president, did not exactly pinpoint him, but did allude to the fact that aside from the 18 people arrested and many more fired in Saudi Arabia, there could be some higher-ups involved. And just in the past half hour or so, Harris, and this story just doesn't let up, there's new reports that inside 2 bags found in a Saudi diplomatic car in Istanbul, away from the consulate, the possessions of Khashoggi were found, but no body. This goes on and on. Back to you.
Wow. I literally took notes while we were talking. Greg Palcott, thank you very much. Boy, this story changes literally by the hour because he wasn't even reporting that an hour ago. Brian?
Doesn't work to anyone's advantage, the Saudis' advantage at all, for them to let Turkey tell the story. They know the story. They have to understand the story. For Turkey to have a major announcement and say this happened on our soil, which is true, at the Saudi consulate, which we know, but for Turkey to sit there and have to lead this investigation is humiliating to Saudi Arabia, and it's as dumb as their murder. I don't know, I guess the Crown Prince is still having an investment meeting, walked in and still got a standing ovation when he got there, which is unthinkable, unfathomable. Overall, a couple of things just has me taking a step back. Number one, why is Turkey acting holier than thou when they have over 200 journalists either jailed or disappeared? Number two, man, they seem to know a lot about it as if they were tipped off. And number three, they seem to really benefit if the Saudi and American relationship fractures and ruptures. I'm not saying that they're not 100% guilty in Saudi Arabia, and I'm not saying the fingerprints of the Crown Prince aren't on it. I'm just saying for Turkey to be the ones to tell us is rich, to say the least.
They're playing it for maximum damage.
It's ironic. And the other thing I would follow up with you on, Brian, just in terms of the relationships, you know, the strangeness of trust among some countries that we have dealt with over the years is now on full display. I mean, you know, in the beginning of this, who do we trust? Do we trust the leadership in Turkey? Do we trust Saudi Arabia? Now, Saudi Arabia has been so disjointed with so many different changes in the story. But what do you say about that?
Who do we trust? I start with Israel and work my way backwards. If I was to put a trust list, Jordan would be right after that. Saudi Arabia, I thought it was a transactional relationship. They needed us, we needed them. Not so much as energy as an ally in the region and a wedge against Iran. When we pull out of that deal and we get behind Saudi Arabia, it's not because we believed in their style or government or their personal philosophy, but it's because we thought this is what we've done for 80 years. The President Obama moved us away from that. I'm more comfortable with that. And Jared Kushner, a Orthodox Jewish American working with the Saudi government, that is huge news towards a peace agreement with the Palestinians. And then this happens. I'm not saying I have the answers, but man, this is the question that we have to tie together.
Yeah, Leslie?
Well, part of the problem that I have, you know, that we are here in the media is when you look at somebody like Khashoggi, who actually had a wonderful relationship with the royal family for decades, and he was a very well-respected journalist. And when he started to go against what they were doing in Yemen, when he started to say, I don't want the women arrested that want the right to vote and the right to drive, as they do fortunately have now, he had to flee his country. And what message does this send, not only to journalists in the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia, but worldwide, that they can't find safe haven in another country, if in fact this is true, and I do believe that it is true. And in addition to that, what kind of a message does it send to the world when you are a king or a queen of a kingdom, any kind of a monarchy or even a dictatorship, that you can, in a sense, get away with murder? Because I don't think that we will ever find this man's body.
None of his writing justifies what allegedly happened to him.
Absolutely.
He also didn't like that the Saudi prince was getting closer to Israel and trying to figure out that problem. It wasn't just about all of the internal structures inside of Saudi Arabia. I want to get back to the Turkey point. Let's be very clear that Erdogan is not concerned about justice for Jamal Khashoggi. He is concerned about going after Saudi, which is one of their rivals. As you mentioned, they are notorious for going after journalists and their families, threatening their families, making their families disappear. This is about that rivalry. But when it comes to the Saudis, there are still very serious questions. I'm wondering why the Saudis haven't produced their own footage of what happened inside that consulate.
They took their cameras, right?
Right. You know that they have footage of what happened in there, and yet they're not releasing it. And the reason why Gina Haspel is going is because Turkey, we can't trust Turkey, we can't trust Turkish media sources, and because the Saudis keep changing the story, we can't trust them either.
So, Katie, to your point, from what we know from reporting about when hits happen, if it's been ordered, if it's a command situation, yeah, there would be some sort of capturing of audio or video, because they've got to report back to somebody, especially since nobody apparently can locate the exact
somewhere.
Placement of the remains, which is heartbreaking on behalf of his family, for sure, in all of this. So, Melissa, I want to ask you, though, just deeper about the situation with keeping up with what was going on in the consulate. Because, again, with the cameras and the audio that were promised at first to be out there, and we still don't know who exactly has seen that. There's been some unconfirmed reporting that maybe people have seen it.
We know that we have Gina Haspel on the ground. We know that Secretary of State Mike Pompeo is going to do a press briefing this afternoon at, I think, 3:45 Eastern time. And you have to assume that that's going to be the details on what we know here and a message out to the rest of the world about what it is that we need to see from here. I mean, one thing to keep in mind, and this is a point that a couple of you made, but Turkey is really playing this for maximum damage. Yep. I mean, they are really in this to make Saudi Arabia look as bad as they possibly can, because anything that drives a wedge between Saudi and its allies in the West creates a better situation for them, a better situation for Iran, for all of the other factions. And it's a really tough spot to be in, because without question, this cannot be ignored, and it is an enormous problem. But as we move away from the Saudis, who benefits? Who benefits?
So herein lies my question for the Saudi royals. You're letting Turkey now run with the ball all the way up the field. They're in the red zone. What do you do to catch up? And what we've seen them do is change the story yet again.
Well, we don't know what the truth is.
The details of the story.
And don't you think, guys, that that if the tapes would exonerate her and if there was audio that would make them look good, we would have seen that right away?
I don't know, because of what Melissa is saying. The Turks don't really need it right now.
No, I'm talking about Saudi Arabia. If they had it with their cameras and their audio.
They have the footage they could show us about exactly what happened.
I bet that there are tapes and audio then perhaps based on what you're saying, Katie. But would they be exoneration?
No, I don't think so, because they probably would have released it by now, and they've changed their story so many times. I don't think they can dig themselves out of this hole.
No, the best
thing there, the administration's patience is running out on this on all levels, where it's President Trump's comments, Vice President Pence, Pompeo later today, and Jared Kushner yesterday saying.
So what does the U.S. do, real quickly, Brian, at this point?
Well, put it this way. For the Saudi Arabians, it's preserve the prince. And the king tried to back up the prince yesterday. They're going to surround the prince. Everyone around them will fall. People that are involved, they misinterpreted my thoughts.
You don't think the prince will fall? The crown prince?
Well, I don't know enough about the structure. I know the king doesn't want him to fall. I know it's his son. And I know we don't call the shots over there. They tend to do that. But that's what I think. There's going to be people explaining how they misinterpreted what that should have been done, and it was an interrogation gone wrong.
If Turkey knew that
acceptable.
there were a plan afoot a couple of weeks or a week or whatever it was before, or if they just learned it, that's a detail that we would want to ask about.
They did nothing to stop it.
Right.
Either.
All right, let's move on. House Minority Leader Nancy Pelosi revealing how she may use her power as House Speaker if Democrats retake the lower chamber in November. Her latest comments and the reaction they're getting from Republicans. Plus, President Trump ramping up his attack